posed by Al-Shabaab and its affiliates. Continued predictable support for Somalia's security sector and stabilization efforts remain indispensable for preserving the hard-won gains against terrorism. Therefore, at this pivotal juncture, when Somalia is focused on defeating extremism, any action that diverts attention, weakens cohesion, or fuels division is profoundly irresponsible. Mr. President, against the backdrop of Israel's previous references to Somaliland of the Federal Republic of Somalia as a destination for the deportation of Palestinian people, especially from Gaza, its unlawful recognition of Somaliland region of Somalia is deeply troubling. For decades, Israel's dispossession and occupation of Palestinian land have been a central source of instability and conflict in the Middle East. It is now exporting this destabilizing conduct to the Horn of Africa with serious implications for regional peace and security. Pakistan unequivocally rejects any proposals or plans aimed at the forced displacement of Palestinians. Security Council Resolution 2803 endorsed President Trump's comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, which unequivocally states, I quote, "No one will be forced to leave Gaza," unquote. Any actions that advocate or imply displacement or resettlement not only violate international law, but also undermine the prospect of a just and lasting peace. We reaffirm our steadfast support for the Palestinian people in their legitimate struggle for self-determination. The only path to lasting peace and stability lies in the realization of an independent, contiguous, and sovereign state of Palestine on pre-1967 borders, with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. In conclusion, Mr. President, Pakistan calls upon the Security Council and the broader international community to speak with one voice and reject all actions that undermine Somalia's unity and territorial integrity. On our part, we remain firmly and resolutely committed to standing with the government and people of Somalia in the country's march towards peace and prosperity. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
President, we thank Assistant Secretary General Khalid Kiari for his briefing. We, much like the majority of our Security Council colleagues, we are deeply concerned by Israel's politically motivated decision to recognize the independence of Somaliland. This decision is at odds with the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the unity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. We very much understand the well-founded reaction to this decision on the part of the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia, the African Union leadership, regional states, and Arab and Muslim countries. We are concerned by potential consequences, including about a potential escalation of tensions in the Horn of Africa and beyond. In principle, we are in favor of settling intra-Somalian contradictions on the basis of inclusive national dialogue without any external interference. We support Mogadishu's efforts to resolve security threats, to establish lasting peace, and to implement its sovereign priorities, factoring in the cultural and historical diversity of this multi-ethnic nation. We call on international players not to attempt to further their own geopolitical regions in the Horn of Africa region by capitalizing on the systemic problems of African states. We'd also like to emphasize that decisions akin to the one taken by the Israeli cabinet risk further complicating the efforts of Mogadishu and its partners' efforts to combat al-Shabaab terrorists. Colleagues, just last week, speaking in this very chamber on the topic of the vote on the Security Council resolution on AWESOM, the AU Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia, members of this council spoke at length about the price that's been paid for these efforts. Above all, the price involved thousands of lives laid down by African peacekeepers, Somalian security forces, and civilians. We cannot forget this. On a separate note, it's worth noting that current complex challenges we see in Somalia are, to a large extent, the consequences of the onerous legacy of the era of Western colonialism. The same can be said for other African states. I think it's an open secret to all in this chamber where the root causes of the majority of territorial disputes and inter-ethnic and interfaith contradictions in contemporary Africa lie. The Russian Federation and the USSR before it constantly spoke of this, both at the Security Council and at the General Assembly. Together with a wide array of like-minded countries, the Russian Federation continues to combat colonialism in all of its forms, first and foremost by helping to build a genuinely multipolar world based on equal and mutually beneficial interstate relations, free from diktats, free from external interference. Specifically, in December, the group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter submitted a resolution that was adopted by the General Assembly, a resolution proclaiming the 14th of December the International Day Against Colonialism. As the situation we're discussing today shows, Africa still needs such active international efforts aimed at anti-colonialism. We call on all sensible states interested in helping to build a genuinely independent and successful African development models to join us. In the anti-colonial context, in relation to the situation in Somalia, it's also important to repeat our principled position. Voluntary financial assistance to Somalians is provided free of charge. It cannot be preconditioned on the fulfilling of political requirements. By way of conclusion, we'd like to express our solidarity with the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia and the Somalian people during this difficult period. Russia will continue supporting Mogadishu in combating both international terrorism as well as efforts to exert unilateral political and economic pressure. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of France.
Mr. President, I'd like to begin by thanking the Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Khaled Kiari, for that briefing. France recalls its commitment to the unity, territorial integrity, and the sovereignty of Somalia in accordance with the United Nations Charter. France welcomes the recent renewals of the sanctions regime targeting the terrorist group Al-Shabaab and the mandates of the African Union Support and Stabilization Mission, as well as the UN Support Office in Somalia. This represents decisive support provided by this Council to Somalia in its quest for security and stability. It's essential to avoid any action liable of compromising peace and security in Somalia, as well as in the Horn of Africa and the Gulf of Aden. Internal disputes within Somalia must be resolved in a negotiated manner in the context of a dialogue between all Somali stakeholders. Easing of political tensions within the country is crucial to effectively counter terrorism and to enable the smooth conduct of future elections. Mr. President, I wish to recall in conclusion that, faithful to the spirit of the New York Declaration adopted by the General Assembly on the 12th of September this year, France will continue to stand opposed to any forced displacement of the civilian population and to any violation of international law and international humanitarian law in particular. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of Slovenia. I would like to thank Assistant Secretary General Chiari for his briefing. For 2 years at this table, we have been unambiguous in opposing two threats to international order and global security: the erosion of multilateralism and the disregard for international law. Colleagues, foreign interference does not arrive only with tanks and missiles. It also takes quieter but no less damaging forms: political pressure and actions that undermine sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence. These principles are not abstract. They are being tested today. It is in this context that we express our deep concern regarding the action taken against Somalia last week. It risks further destabilizing a region already burdened by multiple political and security crises. Slovenia reiterates its support for the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Only Somalis themselves can determine the future of their country, free from unwarranted external interference. It is up to Somalis of Somalia and of Somaliland to agree in dialogue on a system of governance that protects the interests of all parts of Somalia. Efforts of the international community should be directed towards supporting meaningful dialogue between Somalia and Somaliland. We encourage the United Nations, the African Union, and regional organizations to offer their support in this regard, should Somalis desire it. Colleagues, the current situation must not distract from Somalia's urgent security priorities, including the fight against terrorism. The international community should work together with Somalia, supporting its efforts through cooperation and sustained engagement. Colleagues, I have to address the issue of Palestine and comparison as raised by the United States. Slovenia recognized Palestine as an independent state. We did so in response to the undeniable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. Palestine is not part of any state. It is illegally occupied territory, as declared by the International Court of Justice, among others. Palestine is also an observer state in this organization. Somaliland, on the other hand, is a part of a UN member state, and recognizing it goes against the Article 2, Para 4 of the UN Charter. Colleagues, throughout our tenure, we have consistently called for peace, not as an empty slogan, but as a responsibility. And we have worked to cultivate that notion through Leadership for Peace debates. To lead for peace is to place the pursuit of sustainable peace above narrow national interest, to choose cooperation over convenience. It is to recognize that sustainable peace is achieved not outside of, but through the United Nations itself. The United Nations is only as strong as the commitment of its member states. And for this reason, what the organization needs today is a mobilization of all of us, of its member states, for an alliance for peace. I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
For his briefing here this afternoon. I wish to make it clear, Israel's engagement with Somaliland has a long and consistent record. In 1960, when Somaliland emerged as an independent state, Israel was among 35 countries that formally recognized its independence. In the late 1980s, under the regime of Siad Barre, Somaliland's civilian population was subjected to mass atrocities. Entire cities were destroyed, civilians were deliberately targeted. These crimes are now widely recognized as the Isaac genocide. At the time, Israel was the only country to formally raise these atrocities in this very council. On May 2nd, 1990, Israel's then acting permanent representative, Yochanan Bain, submitted this letter to this very council, warning of grave human rights violations in Somalia, including the destruction of Hargeisa and the targeting of civilians. This document forms part of the official record of the Security Council. That record underscores the consistency of Israel's engagement, grounded in concern for human rights, accountability, and legal principles. That history provides essential context for the discussion surrounding Israel's recognition of Somaliland today. Let me be clear, Israel's recognition of Somaliland is neither provocative nor novel. It is a lawful, principled acknowledgement of a long-established reality, consistent with international law and aligned with the values that this Council is meant to uphold. Mr. President, Somaliland's modern political history is clear and well documented. On June 26, 1960, the former British Somaliland Protectorate attained independence as the State of Somaliland. In the days that followed, prior to its voluntary union with the Trust Territory of Somalia on July 1, 1960, Somaliland was recognized by 35 states, including the United States, the United Kingdom, France, China, Egypt, Ethiopia, the Soviet Union, and Israel. Somaliland entered that union as a recognized sovereign entity, exercising its right to self-determination. that union failed to produce a durable or fully ratified constitutional settlement. Political marginalization, repression, and mass violence followed. When the Somali central government collapsed, Somaliland reasserted its sovereignty in May 1991. For more than 3 decades since, it has existed entirely outside the authority of Mogadishu. Since 1991, Somaliland has consistently met the objective criteria for statehood under customary international law, as reflected in the Montevideo Convention. 1, it has a permanent population. 2, a defined territory. 3, an effective government. 4, the capacity to conduct foreign relations. In fact, Somaliland has held regular competitive elections, ensured peaceful transfers of power, and maintained effective governance and security throughout its territory. In a region marked by instability, Somaliland has demonstrated continuity, responsibility, and restraint. Moreover, Somaliland's engagement with the international community is already sustained and practical. Several states maintain representative, liaison, or economic offices in Hargeisa. These relationships reflect ongoing diplomatic, economic, and development cooperation. They also reflect an acknowledgement in practice of Somaliland's capacity to govern responsibly. Israel's recognition builds on this reality. This step was taken as an exercise of sovereign authority, consistent with international law and long-standing diplomatic practice. It is not a hostile step towards Somalia, nor does it preclude future dialogue between the parties. Recognition is not an act of defiance. It is an opportunity to promote clarity, an opportunity to encourage responsibility, an opportunity to strengthen stability in the Horn of Africa. This recognition is forward-looking. It aligns with the spirit of the Abraham Accords: cooperation over isolation, pragmatism over paralysis, and partnership over perpetual conflict. Somaliland has demonstrated a willingness to govern responsibly, to secure itself, and to engage constructively with regional and international partners. This trajectory is also not without precedent. In the case of South Sudan, early engagement by individual states, including Israel, preceded broader international recognition and supported international integration and stability. Reality was acknowledged first. Consensus followed. Mr. President, the question raised by Israel's recognition of Somaliland is not whether international law permits acknowledgement of long-established facts. It does. The question is whether this Council is ready to engage with reality as it exists. Somaliland's historical sovereignty, more than 3 decades of effective self-governance, and demonstrated capacity to act as a responsible international partner meet the legal criteria that guide recognition. Israel has aligned its foreign policy with this reality. This approach reflects the spirit of the Abraham Accords. It is grounded in international law and directed towards greater stability and security in the region. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement. The representative of Somalia has asked for the floor to make further statement. I give him the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me again the floor. Before proceeding further, I want to make additional remarks in my capacity as a Somali representative of Somalia to directly address the claims made by the representative of Israel who spoke before me. I will make 3 points, Excellency. First, actions of occupying power in Palestine and indeed in the broader region are well documented. These actions constitute clear violations of international law. What we see today and time again are acts to terrorize civilian populations and crimes against humanity and forced displacement of a whole community, starvation of innocent people, and killing and maiming hundreds of thousands. And someone doing all these things are lecturing us today what they call genocide and things like that. I'm shocked to listen to the outrageous comments from the Israeli representative. If we want to talk about genocide, it's Israel that's committing on our own eyes every day. He represents a government that killed more than 70,000 people, civilians, including children, women, elderly, doctors, and other health workers, and patients in hospitals, destroying infrastructures, deliberately starving people of Gaza. To come before us, esteemed council, and accuse Somalia of committing genocide is just ridiculous and it's unbelievable. The other thing that I want to add is he has no idea what Somali is and where Somalis are and what Somali stands for. I think the history is a selective history that he has just generated on his own mind. Let me give you some lessons on this. There is a systematic, it's a troubling, Somalia is one country, one people, one religion that fought together for independence from the colonial. And Somalia is again one that's fighting terrorist organizations in the Horn of Africa as a one group, one religion, one ethnic group. And then when you say the Somaliland, that was a British Somaliland, it was two regions, the Northeast region and Northwest region. And now Northeast region is part of, which is 45% of the land and the population are part of the federal government of Somalia. What we're talking about is Northwest, which is also having a problem. Half of Northwest is now all the region, which is close to the Djibouti border. And they are totally against what the Isaq people that you say, Isaq genocide. And there was no such genocide in Somalia that took place. Somalia had a civil war, and the civil war has its own effects. And we believe the civil war was also financed from outside. So to come to this place and lecture us humanity and genocide and human rights and independence and democracy, and we know what you're doing on a daily basis, is just an insult. And I cannot take it without responding to this. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Majed Abdelaziz, a permanent observer of the Permanent Observer Mission of the League of Arab States to the UN.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. سيد الرئيس اسمحوا لي بداية.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, allow me at the outset to express the League of Arab States' appreciation for your distinguished presidency of the Council's work during December, a month that coincides with the conclusion of your two-year term as a non-permanent member of the Council, in addition to 4 other non-permanent members, including Algeria. Your membership has been marked by credibility, constructive and objective engagement, and a highly professional and responsive approach to global events. You have strived to uphold the Council's role in maintaining international peace and security despite unfavorable global circumstances. I thank you all, and we welcome the new 5 members of the Council, and we wish you all success. I highly appreciate the excellent briefing delivered by Mr. Khaled Kiari, Assistant Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs. I align myself with the statement of the State of Kuwait in its capacity as chair of the Arab Group for December. Mr. President, the League of Arab States strongly supported the request by the A3+, backed by other members, to convene this meeting at the earliest possible opportunity to address a grave development that strikes at the core of the international legal order established by the UN Charter, an order founded on respect for the sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity of states. International reactions reflect a unanimous rejection and condemnation of Israel, the power-occupying Palestinian territory and Syrian and Lebanese Arab lands, for seeking to legitimize the secessionist aspirations of the northwestern region of Somalia, known as Somaliland, which seeks to separate from the Federal Republic of Somalia. Israel aims to use this as a pretext for an illegal presence on Arab African Somali soil to advance well-known political, security and economic agendas that are unacceptable and condemned. These actions flagrantly violate the United Nations Charter and the constitutive instruments of both the African Union and the League of Arab States. Most dangerously, they facilitate
plans for the forced displacement of the Palestinian people and the exploitation of northern Somali ports for the establishment of military bases. This was made abundantly clear in the statement by the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, His Excellency Ahmed Abul Gheit, who condemned this Israeli move as an affront to the unity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, a member of the Arab League. He stressed the League's categorical rejection of this act as a violation of international law and an assault of fundamental legal principles, including respect for state sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, principles that form the cornerstone of the UN Charter and international law. As the Secretary General emphasized, this Israeli action, the occupying power, constitutes yet another breach of international resolutions and international instruments, posing a direct threat to an Arab League member state, destabilizing the Horn of Africa, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden, and gravely undermining Arab-African regional security, which is interconnected and cannot withstand reckless political ventures or delusional expansionist ambitions that are categorically rejected. Mr. President, in this context, the statement issued yesterday by the Council of the League of Arab States at its extraordinary meeting at the level of permanent representatives in Cairo yesterday, Sunday, 28th of December. So the statement sets out the parameters of the Arab position, which I will summarize. First, we condemn in the strongest terms Israel's recognition of the secession of Somalia's northwestern region, known as Somaliland, in pursuit of political security and economic agendas that we categorically reject. We also fully reject any measures arising from this illegitimate recognition aimed at facilitating forced displacement of the Palestinian people or exploiting northern Somali ports to establish military bases. Second, we reaffirm the Arab League's consistent and clear position, as reflected in its resolutions at all levels, that the northwestern region of Somalia, known as Somaliland, is an integral part of the Federal Republic of Somalia, based on the League's charter, the principles of the League's charter, based on the UN Charter, and the charters of all organizations of which Somalia is a member. We reject any attempt to recognize this secession directly or indirectly. Third, we assert that this unlawful Israeli recognition is part of Israel's broader attempts of the occupying power to undermine international peace and security and undermine Arab national security, warranting legal, economic, political, and diplomatic measures to confront it. Fourth, we affirm support for Somalia's security, stability, unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. We support the federal government of Somalia in its efforts to safeguard Somali's sovereignty by land, sea, and air. We reaffirm Somalia's rights to legitimate self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter and relevant provisions of the Arab League Charter. We support the federal government of Somalia in any measures it decides to take to repel aggression within the framework of international legitimacy. Fifth, we express our full support and solidarity with the position of the state of Somalia that any act recognizing the secession of its northwestern region is null, void, and unacceptable. It constitutes a blatant violation of international law. It represents a flagrant interference in Somalia's internal affairs, and it undermines Somalia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, with grave implications for regional peace and security. It heightens political tensions in Somalia, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Horn of Africa. Sixth, we consider Israeli moves as a dangerous attempt to reshape the geopolitical map of the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea off Somalia's coast. We call on the international community to confront these actions as threats to regional and international peace and security, and to freedom of navigation and global trade. Seventh, we categorically reject any form of forcible displacement of the Palestinian people from their land, from their state, or attempts to alter the demographic composition of Palestinian territory, as such acts are forms of the crime of genocide and grave breaches of international law and international resolutions. They undermine efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace and comprehensive peace. In this context, we reject the use of Somali territory to implement these aggressive Israeli schemes. Eighth, we categorically reject the use of any part of Somalia's territory by external actors as a platform for hostile or intelligence activities targeting other states or undermining their security and stability. Ninth, we are ready to mobilize the necessary support for Somalia's government to ensure the adoption of UN resolutions affirming Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and rejecting Israel's recognition as null and void and deeming it as a threat to international peace and security. Tenth, we urge all states and international and regional organizations to refrain from any official or semi-official dealings with the authorities of Somalia's northwestern region, Somaliland, outside the framework of Somali sovereignty. We affirm that any infringement of Somalia's territorial integrity constitutes a hostile act against the Somali state and Arab and African states. It violates international law. Perpetrators of such acts will be held fully accountable under international law. The Arab League Secretariat, in close coordination with the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia, the AU Commission, and the UN Secretariat, will work to counter Israel's recognition of Somalia's northwestern region, Somaliland, threat to international peace and security under Articles 34 and 39 of the UN Charter. We will take all necessary measures to prevent the creation of new hotspots in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea, while ensuring political and security, political stability and safeguarding Somalia's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. In conclusion, Mr. President, it is imperative to treat this Israeli step as a threat to regional and international peace and security, and to compel Israel, the occupying power, to immediately revoke this decision, which constitutes a flagrant violation of international resolutions and the principles of multilateral relations. The League of Arab States also underscores the special responsibility of the Security Council to enforce respect for the Charter and international law, and to compel Israel to revoke immediately this recognition and to intensify global and regional efforts to achieve a comprehensive settlement of the Somali question and restore peace and stability in a framework of full respect of international law and international legitimacy. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Abdelaziz for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Turkey.
Mr. President, thank you for convening this meeting at a time when the principles of international order are once again openly challenged. We also thank ASG Chiari for his briefing. Following up on the joint statement issued on 26 December by the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of a broad group of countries, including Turkey, as well as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, I will make 3 points today. First, Turkey firmly rejects Israel's announcement, which constitutes a clear and serious violation of international law and the Charter of the UN. Unilateral recognition of a region that is a part of a sovereign UN member state directly undermines principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-interference. This announcement constitutes another example of the Netanyahu government's unlawful actions aimed at creating instability at both regional and global level. Such conduct cannot be normalized, ignored, or can be excused. Secondly, this announcement sets a dangerous precedent with far-reaching consequences. Undermining sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, a UN member state, is a blatant threat to international peace and security and risks encouraging fragmentation and instability, particularly in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea. Moreover, this step by Israel, who persists its expansionist policies and which spares no effort to prevent recognition of the state of Palestine, amounts to an explicit intervention in Somalia's internal affairs. Decisions regarding the future of the Federal Republic of Somalia and the Somaliland region should and will be taken by the Somalis alone. Thirdly, Turkey reiterates its full and unwavering support for the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia over its entire territory. We reject any measures aimed at undermining Somalia's unity or weakening its internationally recognized borders, as well as its focus and efforts to combat al-Shabaab terrorism, which we support. We also reject any attempts to link this step to broader agendas that violate international law, including efforts aimed at the forcible displacement of the Palestinian people from their land, which are unacceptable in principle and must be rejected in all its forms. Mr. President, Turkey remains firmly committed to peace and stability in the Horn of Africa. We will continue to stand by the federal government and the people of Somalia and work relentlessly with regional and international partners toward this end. In this context, we expect the Security Council to uphold its responsibilities under the UN Charter and to respond clearly to actions that threaten the sovereignty of a UN member state, as well as international peace and security. We also call on all UN member states to explicitly reject Israel's announcement recognizing the independence of the Somaliland region of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Turkey for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Djibouti.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, Djibouti wishes to reiterate its gratitude to Slovenia for convening this urgent meeting on a matter of profound consequence for international peace and security and for the stability of our region, the Horn of Africa. I want to thank ASG Khalid Ghayari for his briefing. Djibouti fully aligns with the statement by the A3. It also endorses the many important statements by the AU, IGAD, the Arab League, and the OIC, as well as the 21 countries in the region and beyond, have condemned the actions by Israel, which took the unilateral decision to recognize the breakaway region, the so-called Republic of Somaliland. This decision is in direct violation of established international norms and legal principles. These norms are embedded in the founding text of the African Union and its constitutive act, which has the stated objective of defending the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of its member states. Respect for another state's sovereignty and territorial integrity is an essential principle of the UN Charter. Accordingly, the UN Security Council has insisted in its resolutions on respect for Somalia's territorial integrity and unity. Today, Israel's reckless decision undermines these principles, defiantly violates the UN Charter, arrogantly challenges the authority of this council as it is wont to do, and threatens the foundation of the international legal order. It amounts to intervention in Somalia's affair insofar as this action fosters the independence of Somaliland and the breakup of Somalia. It constitutes an unlawful transgression of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the political independence of the Federal Republic of Somalia, of which Somaliland is a constituent part. It sets an extremely dangerous precedent and encourages further fragmentation. Mr. President, such unilateral actions risks inflaming tensions within Somalia and across the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea, emboldening armed groups, bolstering terrorist groups, and unraveling the hard-won gains of the United Nations, the African Union, and the Somali government in our collective efforts to promote peace, security, and stability in the country. In this regard, this Council should take very serious note of the analysis made by the Somali government on the potential security ramifications of the destructive move by Israel in its press release dated December the 26th, 2025, as well as the various declarations made by concerned countries and organizations in the region and beyond. We also take note of the federal government's decision to reject the forced relocation of Palestinians in Somalia, as this is a crime under international law. By virtue of its sovereignty, Somalia enjoys the full range of sovereign powers of its territory and the activities taking place therein. Monsieur le Président, ce faux contrat est le produit de
President, this false contract is the result of extreme distress, which is impossible to understand, which some representatives congratulate the Republic of Slovenia on the success you have achieved as President of the Council during the month of December. We thank the Presidency for swiftly responding to the request of convening this important meeting, request made by the A3+1 and supported by China, Pakistan, and the Russian Federation.
We also thank Mr. Khaled Khiyari, ASG, for his informative briefing. We fully agree with the joint statement by the A3 Plus delivered by Ambassador Othman, the permanent representative of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Mr. President, the African Union expresses grave concern over the latest developments in Somaliland. In this context, the African Union unequivocally underscores its firm position that is based on the principles of the AU enshrined in Article 4 of its charter. This article stresses very clearly the importance of respecting the inviolability of borders after independence. The AU categorically rejects any initiative, any measure that aims to recognize Somaliland as an independent entity. Somaliland remains an integral part of the Federal Republic of Somalia. Any attempt to undermine the unity of Somalia, to undermine the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia, is inconsistent with the main principles of the African Union. Such acts threaten to set a precedent with grave repercussions on peace and stability in Africa. The African Union expresses its grave concern over measures that are inconsistent with international unanimity, that are inconsistent with the principles of international law. Full respect of the United Nations Charter requires the full recognition of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people to establish their independent state. That is recognized by the vast majority of United Nations member states. Rather than taking unprecedented steps, unprecedented provocative steps towards a region in the African continent. Once again, we reiterate the commitment, the historical commitment by Africa to the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to self-determination, the right to establish its independent state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. Mr. President, we reiterate the commitment of the African Union to the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Somalia. And we reiterate our full support to the efforts by Somali authorities to consolidate peace, to strengthen state institutions. The African Union will continue to stand with determination alongside Somalia in its efforts to consolidate sovereignty, peace, and sustainable development. I thank you for your attention.
I thank Mr. Matouk for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Egypt.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to thank you for having accepted to hold this meeting at short notice at such a critical time. And I would like to reaffirm that today Egypt is taking part in this meeting because we have deep historical ties with Somalia. Indeed, Egypt was among the first states to recognize Somalia's independence in 1960. And since that time, Egypt has always supported stability in Somalia. We remember with great pride the sacrifices of our martyrs who gave their lives in defending the independence and territorial integrity of Somalia, which really is the embodiment of the bonds of brotherhood and common destiny that link together our two peoples. While the Somali state is moving forward to building its national institutions, and as the Somali state continues to fight the unjust terrorism, and as it continues to shape its future to turn a page on the past, Somalia now finds itself facing a new challenge today, namely Israel's recognition of the region termed Somaliland. This is a very serious precedent and a blatant violation of the principles of international law and the United Nations Charter, and is a direct assault on the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of Somalia. The recognition of the independence of parts of the territory of a sovereign state is not only an infringement of that country's sovereignty, it's also a direct threat to international peace and security. And it clearly contradicts the well-established principles of international law and the foundations of the African Union. The founding fathers of the Organization of African Unity were wise in scrupulously respecting the borders inherited from the colonial era, and they did this in order to avert any conflict in the region and to preserve the political and social fabric of the African continent. And this also helped to strengthen regional cooperation rather than sowing the seeds of further division. In line with the joint statement of 21 Arab, African, and Islamic states, and in accordance with the statement of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Gulf Cooperation Council, and also in line with the declaration made by the observer of the League of Arab States and the representative of the African Union, Egypt, for its part, has unequivocally refused to recognize Israel's recognition of what is called the Somaliland region. We have condemned this measure because it's a direct violation of the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of Somalia. This measure also is a serious risk for peace and security in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region, which is a natural extension of Egyptian national security. This solidarity reflects the nature and scope of the international rejection of Israel's move, and we believe that the number of states and organizations opposing this in coming days will continue to grow, because this decision risks fueling similar tendencies and practices in other regions of the world. Egypt, therefore, calls upon this esteemed council to unite in rejecting and condemning this Israeli action, which will undoubtedly have serious repercussions for peace, security, stability and safety of millions of African and Arab peoples in East Africa and the Horn of Africa, especially since this measure coincides with sincere regional and national efforts to resolve any outstanding inter-Somalian issues. Mr. President, during the current month, your Council has made commendable efforts led by the United Kingdom to reaffirm support for Somalia by renewing the sanctions regime imposed on al-Shabaab and also extending the mandate of the African Union mission in Somalia. You also supported efforts to strengthen the capacities of the Somali state, and you also backed national reconstruction and development endeavors in Somalia. Unfortunately, this unilateral Israeli move undermines this collective constructive effort and contradicts the foundations upon which the Council's approach is based. And this has been the case now for years, even decades. An approach confirming the unity of Somalia over all of its territory. Instead of focusing our efforts on encouraging the Somali government to exert further efforts aimed at consolidating the pillars of stability and move toward the path of reconciliation and greater political participation. Unfortunately, regrettably, we have to focus today on the repercussions of these unilateral Israeli actions that undermine these efforts. Measures which threaten the political process that your Council has consistently called for, and destabilizing the region and risking dragging Somalia into regional confrontations, whereas Somalia is not a direct party to those confrontations. Mr. President, the security and stability of Somalia is an extension of the security and stability of Egypt, and that's why Egypt believes that any move likely to fuel unrest in Somalia will not only have repercussions within Somalia itself, but will also threaten the region, creating uncertainty and instability. This will also embolden terrorist organizations, foremost among them Al-Shabaab. They will use the current situation to expand their terrorist activities, thereby posing a real threat to regional and international peace and security. In conclusion, Mr. President, I'd like to reaffirm that your Council assume the responsibility to work against this unilateral Israeli move. It's not only about preserving the credibility of the Council's handling of the Somali file for years now, it's also an issue of upholding the role of the Council in safeguarding the principles that are at the core of the UN Charter and the international rules-based order. We look forward to this Council sending out a clear and unambiguous message to reaffirm the unity and sovereignty of Somalia. There can be no manipulation whatever the message used. A message that will reject any attempt to undermine the sovereignty of Somalia. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Egypt for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Arab Group. The group expresses its deep appreciation for the convening of this meeting in light of a grave development that undermines fundamental principles of international law and threatens peace and security in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region, with negative repercussions for international peace and security. Mr. President, the Arab Group firmly rejects and strongly condemns the declaration issued by Israel on 26 December 2025, recognizing what is referred to as the Somaliland region, which lies within the sovereign territory of the Federal Republic of Somalia. The group considers this declaration as an illegal and null and void unilateral act that carries no legal effect, as it constitutes a blatant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia and a flagrant breach of international law and the Charter of the United Nations. The Arab Group stresses that the northwestern region of Somalia is an integral part of its sovereign territory. Any attempt to recognize separation, whether directly or indirectly, sets a dangerous precedent that undermines established principles of the international system, threatens regional and international peace and security, and exacerbates political tensions in Somalia, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the Horn of Africa. Mr. President, the Arab Group views this unlawful Israeli recognition as part of a dangerous attempt to reshape the geopolitical map of the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden region of the Somali coast. It constitutes a direct threat to regional and international peace and security, and to the freedom of navigation and international trade, which requires a clear and firm response from the international community. In this regard, the Arab Group reaffirms its full support for the security, stability, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia by land, sea, and air, its legitimate institutions, and its right to defend its territory in accordance with Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations. The group categorically rejects any use of Somali territory or any part thereof as a platform for hostile or intelligence activities that could undermine the security or stability of other states. The Arab Group also reiterates its categorical rejection of any form of displacement of the Palestinian people from their land and any attempts to alter the demographic composition of the occupied Palestinian territory. It firmly rejects the use of a Somali territory as a platform to implement such aggressive schemes, which constitute a great violation of international law and relevant resolutions of international legitimacy and undermine efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace. Mr. President, the Arab Group calls on the Security Council to discharge its responsibilities under Articles 34 and 39 of the Charter of the United Nations, and to take a firm position against this unlawful Israeli act in order to safeguard the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Somalia, prevent the creation of a new conflict hotspots in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region, and preserve the regional and international peace and security. In conclusion, Mr. President, the Arab Group reiterates unequivocally that the sovereignty, unity, and the territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia are not subject to discussion or compromise. Any infringement upon them under any pretext or guise constitutes a flagrant violation of international law and the Charter of the UN, and a direct threat to regional and international peace and security. The Arab Group categorically and legally rejects and politically rejects any attempt to impose a new fait accompli in Somalia, redraw its geographic or political map, or engage with any entity outside the framework of Somalia's legitimate state institutions. The Arab Group will continue to stand firmly and fully alongside Somalia, the Federal Republic of Somalia, supporting its security, stability, and territorial integrity by land, sea, and air, and assisting it in all legitimate measures taken under international law to defend its sovereignty. The group also calls upon the international community, foremost the Security Council, to assume its full responsibility and take the necessary, clear, and firm positions to prevent any action undermining of Somali sovereignty or the creation of new conflict hotspots in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea region, in order to safeguard regional and international peace and security and uphold the principle of respect for state sovereignty and territorial integrity as a cornerstone of the international order. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of South Africa.
Thank you, Mr. President. South Africa commends you and the Republic of Slovenia for the able manner in which you have presided over the Security Council for the month of December, and for your principled approach during the entire two-year term that you have served on the Council. We thank ASG Khaled Kayari for the briefing. Mr. President, at the outset, we wish to emphasize that we are meeting in the Security Council, a body defined by rules and laws that are part of the larger framework of international law that we as member states of this organization committed ourselves to in order to ensure the orderly and legal functioning of international relations. We all signed the UN Charter and pledged ourselves voluntarily to the international legal norms that flow from our obligations. It is regrettable that we meet again to discuss the blunt violation of the spirit and the letter, not only of the UN Charter, but of international law. Unfortunately, when we condone the steady erosion of the Charter and international law, we allow some of us within this organization to believe that they are beyond the bounds of the rules and are thus not accountable for any violation of international law. We have within our midst a state that continuously violates the resolutions of this Council and the organization with impunity. A state that violates international treaties, including the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. That state, the State of Israel, which has been allowed to get away with myriad of transgression and continues to this day to violate the very laws and norms that we all hold dear, now sees it fit to undermine the territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia, a fellow member state of this organization. It has done so by being the first state to recognize the illegal secession of a part of Somalia's territory. Mr. President, in 1964, the Organization of African Unity, the precursor of Africa's continental body, the African Union, adopted a resolution which considered that the borders of African states on the day of their independence constitute a tangible reality. The OAU furthermore solemnly declared that all member states pledged themselves to respect the borders existing on the achievement of national independence. This principle is further entrenched in Article 4B of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which clearly states that the Union shall be guided by the respect of borders existing on achievement of independence. This principle of uti possidetis reaffirms that colonial borders at independence must be respected. These principles have been the legal basis of the approach by the continent to the principles of territorial integrity and self-determination, which are also enshrined in the UN Charter. It is for these reasons that South Africa firmly and unequivocally rejects any attempt at undermining the unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Somalia. We affirm that Somaliland is an integral part of Somalia. We reiterate the statement of the chairperson of the AU Commission that any attempt to undermine Somalia's territorial integrity runs counter to the fundamental principles of the African Union and risks setting a dangerous precedent with far-reaching implications for peace and stability across the African continent. Mr. President, the actions of the State of Israel as the only state to recognize the illegal secession of a part of Somalia's territory must be condemned as a violation of the UN Charter and international law. It is ironic and cynical that Israel wishes to be the only state to recognize Somaliland, while at the same time rejecting the recognition of the state of Palestine, which the overwhelming majority of UN member states have recognized as being legal in terms of international law. It is incumbent on this Council and the entire UN member states to safeguard the norms that have come to define our peaceful interactions. The actions that negate peace, such as the actions of the State of Israel, therefore warrant condemnation. I thank you.
I thank the representative of South Africa for his statement and nice words addressed to my delegation. The representative of Sierra Leone has asked for the floor to make further statement. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you for the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of my delegation, as this may be the final formal meeting of the year, and as Sierra Leone concludes its tenure on the Security Council. Allow me to firstly extend sincere appreciation to you, Mr. President, and the delegation of Slovenia for a successful presidency and for your steady and professional manner in which you've guided the work of the Council this month. As an elected member of the Council by the General Assembly for the 2024-2025 biennium, Sierra Leone places on record its firm conviction that we've endeavored conscientiously and resolutely to discharge our responsibility in line with international law, faithful fulfillment of the UN Charter. Throughout, we have sought to build bridges through partnership, anchored in principles, guided by pragmatism, and driven by the Council's responsibility to maintain international peace and security. We've also endeavored at all times to uphold the solemn responsibility set out in the UN Charter, that the Council acts on behalf of the entire membership of the United Nations. In that spirit, we're grateful to colleagues across the membership who've described Sierra Leone's contribution as one marked by moral authority and strategic clarity, anchored in the defense of international law, justice, and our shared humanity. Let me also renew our thanks to all members of the Council, permanent and elected, for the solid cooperation during this demanding period. We extend particular appreciation to our fellow A3+ members and to the wider E10 for the solidarity and collaboration. We particularly express deep appreciation to the outgoing members, the class of 2025, Algeria, Guyana, the Republic of Korea, and Slovenia, for the partnership, solidarity, and the commitment shown in navigating a complex and contested period. We also warmly congratulate the incoming members, Bahrain, Colombia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Latvia, and Liberia, and extend our best wishes for a successful and impactful tenure. To Somalia, the incoming President of the Council, we convey our best wishes for a smooth and successful presidency. The monthly rotation of the Council's presidency remains one of the clearest expressions of the sovereign equality of states enshrined in the UN Charter. The Council's rotational presidency is a valued-based institution that must be respected and safeguarded. I also express Sierra Leone's profound gratitude to colleagues in the UN Secretariat for their professionalism and certainly steadfast support throughout our tenure. In particular, we thank the Security Council Affairs Division, SCAD, and all Secretariat colleagues, from conference officers, interpreters, translators, and the technical teams, to safety and security personnel, whose dedication ensured that the Council's work could proceed, often under intense pressure, and whose quiet excellence underpinned every meeting. I also wish to place on record a special acknowledgement of the dedication and commitment and work of the diplomats of the Permanent Mission of Sierra Leone, whose professionalism and sacrifice over the past 2 years contributed meaningfully to the Council's work in service of peace. Mr. President, on the important topic of consideration in this meeting, Sierra Leone reiterates once more the clear position expressed by the A3+ in the statement delivered by the permanent representative of Somalia, affirming unequivocally the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Somalia. These are not optional ideals. They are foundational obligations under the UN Charter and the bedrock of Africa's stability and international peace and security. Yet this matter again demonstrates a deeply troubling reality. Fundamental principles of the Charter are being disregarded, and the Council risks being drawn into a period marked by blatant disrespect for international law and an environment that can be perceived as enabling impunity. So it underscores our firm belief with clarity that this seeming era of impunity is a blight on our collective security system, and it will not endure. Accountability, legal, political, and moral, will ultimately put an end to any illusion of impunity, as the alternative cannot be a reset, but an erosion of the very framework built to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, or from hell, as aptly said by former UN Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld. Finally, Sierra Leone leaves this Council with a deepened conviction that a reform of the Security Council is not merely desirable, but imperative. The historical injustice against Africa must be redressed fully and without further delay if this Council is to retain legitimacy, credibility, and effectiveness. Until that reform is realized, Sierra Leone encourages all members to uphold the heightened responsibility entrusted to this Council, to act with restraint, fidelity to the Charter, and an unwavering commitment to international law, so that 2026 and beyond may be more stable and peaceful. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for the statement. The representative of Guyana has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give her the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Guyana's position on today's agenda item has been fully expressed in the A3+ statement delivered earlier by Somalia. However, I wanted to add these few words. As this seems likely to be our final meeting for the month and year, and it's certainly never certain, and Guyana's last meeting as a member of the United Nations Security Council, I take this opportunity to commend you, Mr. President, and the delegation of Slovenia for a successful presidency for the month of December, and wish Somalia the very best for their presidency in January. Guyana was honored to serve as an elected member of the Security Council for the past 2 years. During our tenure, we were steadfast in our commitment to contribute to the maintenance of international peace and security, and placed respect for the UN Charter and international law at the center of our efforts. We leave this Council even more resolute in this commitment and thankful for the opportunity to have made a modest contribution. I extend Guyana's heartfelt appreciation to all Council members for their support and partnership during our tenure. I also thank SCAD and the UN staff for the kind support provided. To our A3 brothers and sisters, joining the A3+ mechanism was one of the best decisions Guyana made at the start of its tenure. We are deeply appreciative of the partnership, friendship, and cooperation we enjoyed with Algeria, Mozambique, Sierra Leone, Somalia, and the African Union Permanent Observer Mission. Special appreciation also to our fellows in the class of 2025 who will move on like us at the end of this month. We extend best wishes to the incoming members of the Council, Bahrain, Colombia, DRC, Latvia, and Liberia. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Guyana for the statement. The representative of Algeria has asked for the floor to make further statement. I give him the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. I would like to mention 2 points. First of all, I would like to fully align myself with what seemed to me like an improvisation on your part. A majestic improvisation, particularly relevant. I'm referring to what you said about the difference in substance, in nature, between the situation in Palestine and the situation in Somaliland, which, the way we see it, is an integral part of Somalia. Second, and very briefly, we would like to express to you my admiration for you, Ambassador Samuel Bogat, and also admiration for your team and your country. We admire your commitment and the rigor which you exhibited throughout your term on the Security Council. I can attest to the fact that you served as the catalyst for limiting elected members of the Council, and you managed to bring us together behind the objective of a fairer world, a world of peace, a world of security. Now, it would be remiss of me to end without paying tribute to my A3+ colleagues. In particular, I'd like to pay tribute to the colleagues coming from a non-African country, colleagues which nonetheless held on throughout the mandate and committed themselves to staunchly defending African causes here on this council. I am referring, of course, to our colleague from Guyana, Ambassador Carolyn Brisket. At a time when Algeria is preparing to leave the Council with a feeling of having accomplished its duty, I would like to tell my colleagues, elected members of this Council, but my message also goes out to those who will be coming onto the Council. My message is this: persevere. Persevere and always attempt to work together with all Council members, permanent members and elected members alike. And all this in the pursuit of our common objective. It might be a weakness, but I do believe it. Our objective being the preservation of international peace and security. And I would also like to add that this is something that's particularly pertinent for elected members. I would like to add justice. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement, as well as the very kind words addressed to my delegation. The saying goes, thanks go to delegation of Guyana and Sierra Leone, the team of 2025, the class of 2025. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. Before adjourning the meeting, as this seems to be the last scheduled meeting of the Council for the month of December, I would like to express the sincere appreciation of the delegation of Slovenia to the members of the Council and to the Secretariat of the Council for all the support they have given us. And if you allow me, I would also like to thank everyone as representative of Slovenia and send special thanks to our fantastic team, both the Permanent Mission of Slovenia to the UN, as well as at the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs back in Ljubljana. Indeed, it has been a busy month and one in which we rallied to consensus on several important issues within our purview. We could not have done it alone and without the hard work, support and positive contribution of every delegation and the representatives of the Secretariat, including the technical support team, conference services, officers, interpreters, translators, verbatim reporters, and security staff. As we end our presidency, I now speak on behalf of the Council in wishing the delegation of Somalia good luck in the month of January. Yes. On behalf of the Council, I would also like to express the sincere appreciation of the Council to the 5 outgoing members, namely Algeria, Guyana, Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, and Slovenia. As President of the Council, I want to thank them for their contributions during their term on the Security Council. I want to thank the Council colleagues for cooperation and camaraderie that you extended to our group, the class of 2025, one of a kind. We were privileged and honored to serve on the Council. We did our best to live up to the expectations of the general membership of the organization whom we represent on this Council. And with this, the meeting is adjourned.
Mostly live in the areas of the Arctic where there's no trees. On